Welcome back, degenerates. This is Locked In, and I'm your host, Mason Cameron at PFF underscore Mace on Twitter. And unfortunately, no Vishaal today. We're riding solo, but that's okay. We still have a lot of games to check out on the slate. This is a good week, week 15. A lot of money making opportunities in this one. And of course, first and foremost, if you guys haven't checked us out, make sure you guys head over into our Discord, head to importantnonsense.com, become a member, and that's how you can get into our Discord. That's how you get all of my picks, all of Vishaal's picks, and of course, right in the midst of the fantasy playoffs, you can ask all the fantasy guys like Jason, like Steve, like Neil, everybody for all the advice you need so you can take home your fantasy championship. And of course, make sure you guys are checking out all of our channels. Right here, subscribe Important Nonsense and go over to our Twitch and follow at Nonsense FF. That's where you can stay locked in. We have shows pretty much every day of the week. Make sure you're hitting up Jason before Sunday's game, or excuse me, before Sunday's games for the countdown, and also right before Thursday night football, and of course on Wednesdays too. So make sure you guys hit them up for that. And how everybody knows how this show goes, we don't break down every single game. I just have 3 picks for you that I think are going to be. Actually, I've got a special little fourth one. I got a nice little player prop tucked away in there. But of course, we don't hit up every game. So if you guys do have any questions about these games or any questions about any other games on the slate, make sure you head over into the Discord and hit us up on that. But first and foremost, we're going to talk about a little Thursday night football. Surprisingly, a good game. I was really shocked to see this one end up being a good game. Not going to lie, I was actually on the under for this one, and it did not hit. It did not hit. Shocker. 29-28, the Atlanta Falcons upset the Bucks. Bucks were 5.5-point favorites in this one. Game total about 44.5 points. Like I said, it went over. In Atlanta, out of the playoff picture, coming in and dousing the hopes for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And this was a crazy game. Tampa was up 28-14 in the fourth quarter of this game. And don't look now, the Kirk Cousins renaissance came out to play. 30 of 44, 373 yards, 3 touchdowns. He had 8.5 yards per attempt, which is absolutely insane to me. I did not think we were going to see this. And of course, what timeline are we living in that this was the Kyle Pitts career game here? 11, 166, 3 touchdowns. Absolutely insane. Never seen output like that from Kyle Pitts. Should have seen it coming with how Kirk Cousins has been just peppering Pitts with targets this season after he's come back. And then Bijan Robinson, 175 all-purpose. I knew he was going to be a big deal in the passing game. I had him at over 36.5 receiving yards. But wow, he was a big deal on the ground too. And of course, Tampa losing this game down the stretch. It sent this team into shambles. No longer in first place. The Carolina Panthers now take control of first place in the NFC South. And that's a tough look because with 2 games against the Panthers over the next 3 weeks, this is a tough look for this Bucs team. But I said it in my preview over on PFF before this game that this isn't the matchup that is going to make or break if the Tampa Bay Buccaneers take this division. It's going to be those 2 matchups against the Panthers coming in the next couple of weeks. So make sure you guys keep an eye out for that one. And of course, keep an eye out for the Panthers on Sunday this week. But it's going to be a good ride for the NFC South. You know, not the most, impressive division out there, but still a lot can come down to these last final games. So we're going to head into the slate for the week. And I really love this first game. And I have to warn you guys, don't get scared off by this big line because it's not big enough. First game we have on the slate here, the New York Jets are heading into Jacksonville to take on the Jaguars. Spread on this one. Like I said, don't just bear with me for a second. 13.5 points for the Jags. Jags are almost 2 touchdown favorites at home here. Game total on this one about 41.5 points. And of course, I am going to be siding with the Jags here. I do not think that this spread is big enough, even at 13.5. It started at 12 and has moved up throughout the week. And this is another reason why we tell you guys to get in early, get in often, because you could get in on that 12. And I think that is I think even at 13.5, it's a winner. Anything, I don't foresee it moving to 14. I would sort of hesitate because, it has that push value there. I would rather get it underneath that key number, but really, this is both an endorsement of what we've seen out of the Jags as much as it is picking on this Jets team in their current iteration, who has just been horrendous on both sides of the ball since week 9. That week 9 bye, the trade deadline, everything that's gone into that team. Like, this team is playing for the first overall pick, and while they've won some games, at the same time, they look by and large like the worst team in the NFL right now. Frankly, a lot of their production this season and over the last 5 weeks in particular has been on the special teams side of the ball. 3 return touchdowns over the last 5 games. They are I don't know if you guys have seen some of these metrics on special teams. They're not just a great special teams unit. They're not just one of the best special teams units of this season. They're one of the best historical special teams units on all sides, from field goal block to the return teams to the kickoff. They've just really been winning in those phases. But I just don't think that that's going to be enough to win football games, especially when you're as bad on offense and as bad on defense as they've been over the last month or so of the season. They've scored 14 or less points in their last 2 road games. And even if we just look back to last week, 10 points, and they had one of those being that return. So 3 points on offense last week. And it shows when we look at a lot of their advanced metrics. Bottom 2 in EPA per play, yards per play, and scoring drive percentage. Defensively, it's not a whole lot better. In all 3 of those metrics, they're 26th in EPA per play allowed, 16th in yards per play allowed. So not terrible, but frankly, it isn't because they're not letting up a lot of production. It's frankly because these teams haven't needed to, because they haven't had to push the issue. They haven't had to score a whole lot. But that hasn't stopped them from not covering a bunch of these spreads as well. And of course, 23rd in scoring drive percentage. And now we go to the big topic of conversation for this game. Brady Cook going to be starting for the Jets at quarterback. It's as bad as you think. The tape is as bad as you think. It's looked really bad, and it looked really bad last week. And as much as you would want to say, they've been in a bad spot at quarterback pretty much all season, I think anybody would rather take what they've had pretty much every other week than what we saw out of Brady Cook this past week. 4 turnover-worthy plays. He had a 35.8 passer rating. So just for reference, you guys, if you guys didn't know this, you get a 39.6 passer rating as the baseline. So you could legitimately spike the ball every single play and get a higher passer rating than what we saw out of Brady Cook this past week. It's that bad. It's getting that bad. And of course, when we talk about this Jaguars team, they have looked so revamped. They have been one of the more impressive teams over the last month. If you're not on them already, get on them now, because they're 4-0 against the spread over their last 4. And in those games, they beat the Chargers by 29, Arizona by 3 on the road, a little give or take, Tennessee by 22 on the road, and then this past week, Indy by 17 at home. That gives them an average victory margin over those last 4 games at 17.75 points. And now they're facing the worst team in the NFL on their third string quarterback. I mean, Tennessee is a great example of that game on the road, winning by 22. Now, Tennessee isn't the worst team in the NFL. They're not great, but we saw them be competitive in some spots. This Jets team has not looked that competitive at all over their span. And when we just look at some of these outcomes for this Jets team, I mean, it's not looking good. We talked about that 34-10 game right there. Now they did show a little bit of life versus Atlanta, 27-24, but when we talk about, I think a lot of that is because the offense could finally function when they had Tyrod Taylor moving the ball just a little bit. But really, it's just been such a spread of, are they good? Are they bad? Can they figure it out? Can they not? Look at these game totals for them. This is a game against the Cleveland Browns. They had 27 points. They had 2 return touchdowns in this game. They don't have those 2 return touchdowns. They're scoring 13 points. 14 against the Patriots. 10 against Baltimore. 10 against Miami. And now we just watched this Atlanta defense. They're really hot and cold. It hasn't really been that great for them a lot throughout this season. So they have some things to figure out there. They've talked about it, and this is just not a profile that reads as a team that is going to compete with a team like we've seen out of Jacksonville this year or out of the last month or so of the season. And over that span on defense, just to put a nice little bow on how good they've been, this team is first in EPA per play allowed on defense, successful play rate allowed on defense, and touchdown drive percentage. This team has only allowed 24 offensive points over that 4-game span. That's the second fewest in the NFL. And then offensively, they've looked just as impressive. They're 4th in scoring drive percentage, 2nd in offensive points scored, and just to see what they've done to some of these teams out there. And I mean, to anybody that watched that last game and saw Trevor Lawrence figure it out, he had a 90.4 PFF grade. I mean, just a phenomenal look. 36-19 against the Colts, 25-3, 35-6. Those are the type of scores that you want to see that gives you confidence that this team can beat this Jets team by 2 touchdowns. And frankly, I'm not afraid of it. I'm going to take them at the minus 13.5. And I'm also going to sprinkle a little bit on the Jags to win in a shutout, which is plus 1,400. Frankly, I think they have all the stuff to do it. So we're going to see how this one shakes out, but I am far more confident in what we've seen out of this Jags team than anything that we've seen out of the Jets. And a lot of times on this show, you guys will know, we've made quite a bit of money picking on bad teams. What I'm doing here is both picking on the bad team and endorsing the good team. And that's where you get spreads like this, that even at 13.5, it still feels mispriced. But now we go on to a much, much more competitive game here in this one. We have the Buffalo Bills at minus 1.5 heading into New England to take on the Patriots. And I won't lie, I was shocked to see the Bills come into this one early in the week at minus 1.5. And I fully intended, I took the Patriots on the money line early in the week, fully expecting this line to swing towards them throughout the week. And it really didn't happen. And that's okay. I'm going to continue to take them on the money line here. You can get it at even money at DraftKings, and that's where I'm going to be sitting in this one. And like I said, this is just a shocking line, particularly for anybody that watched this Bills team play last week against the Bengals. Just I want to drop into this great note from Next Gen Stats that we saw this past week. So everybody remembers this pick 6 that we saw. Too loud. Everybody remembers this pick 6 that we saw. Joe Burrow loses the ball, intercepted on what looked like a screen to Christian Benford. It's 67-yard pick 6. This little nugget from Next Gen Stats here is incredible. Prior to that pick, the Bills win probability was just 16.2%. This pick six equated to a 60.8 percentage point increase on their win percentage. That's the single biggest probability swing on a play outside of the 2 minutes since NGS started, in the NGS era, since 2016. They very nearly lost that game to Joe Burrow in the snow. And Joe Burrow and that Bengals team, they've looked much improved since he's returned. Not just himself, but defensively. Now, I'll give them that. But at the same time, I'm not sure where that performance on a high variance play, on multiple high variance plays, in fact, for them to win that game makes them the favorite in this one. It just doesn't really quite sit right with me. Because now they face a New England team. This Patriots team just beat them in Buffalo in week 5. That was their first regular season loss in Buffalo since 2023. New England hasn't lost a home game since September. And they're coming off of a bye. I'm not sure where we're getting this indication that this Bills team is for real. I mean, they're 9-4. They're a good ball club, but they're favorites against the division leaders and one of the best teams in the AFC, 11-2 Patriots. Drake May is the MVP candidate, not Josh Allen right now. So I'm not quite sure where we're getting this line from or what we've seen. It'd be different if this team was stacked throughout and they just underperformed in a lot of issues or in a lot of instances, but they haven't. They have a lot of issues. They have issues on run defense. They have issues out wide. I'm just not quite sure where we're seeing that they're 1.5 point favorites on the road here. And just to add a little bow onto it, they're coming in at a rest disadvantage. This is the 4th time that the Bills have faced a rest disadvantage this season. They've lost each of the other 3. They're 3-3 on the road this season. They've lost 2 of their last 3 on the road. I'm just not sure what metrics we look at that are going to say otherwise. Because we've seen, granted, the Pats have some injuries. I do not think, as long as they still have Drake May, as long as they still have as many of the weapons as they have, as long as they still have the improvements they've made in the secondary, I just don't see this being the case where the Bills are going to be playing from ahead and winning at -1.5. So I'm going to be taking the Patriots on the money line here. And again, a big piece of this, which I just alluded to just a second ago, is the Bills have major issues on the ground. They have issues stopping the run. And now I think people might have forgot about that because over the last 2 weeks, they've played relatively well against against the run. But neither of those teams that they played are overly productive on the ground. Just look at these games. We have this game against Pittsburgh. We have games against Cincinnati. Neither of those teams have been running the ball with frequency or consistency this season. Both of those offenses have been touch and go. I just don't see this being an instance where suddenly they figure it out against what has been one of the better running teams in the NFL, and that's without even talking about Drake May. So just to talk about some of the metrics behind that feat, this team is allowing the 6th most rushing yards to backs this season. They struggle limiting guys after contact. That is their big issue. And what that does is that leads to explosive runs of 10 or more yards. They allow 3.5 yards after contact per attempt this season. That's 31st in the NFL. And they're one of 2 teams this season to allow a 10-plus yard run on over 14% of carries. That's a big deal. That's a big number. That's the type of number that loses you games and has lost them games quite a few times this season. And when we say that, who does that make you think of? Guys that guys that make people miss and get yards after contact, and guys that are explosive. This is a Travion Henderson game, baby. This is a Travion Henderson game. And the books have way underestimated his line in this one. 45.5 rushing yards is the line. I'm going to be taking the over here. A cold game. And when we talk about what we've seen from Trey Henderson, man, since that role expanded in week 8, he has been electric. He has been phenomenal. And even though he splits this workload with Ramondre Stevenson, because he's so good after contact, because he is so explosive, he really just needs that 1 or 2 explosive plays to get him up over even a 60-yard line. It's something that we saw last week. It's something that we saw the week before. In each of those games, he has gone over this line since week 8. And over that span, he has 5.5 yards per carry. And this is the kicker. This is the kicker, you guys. 4.5 yards after contact per attempt. Over 80% of his yardage has come after contact. That's why he's able to succeed even when they had injuries up front. No Will Campbell in this one. I don't really think it's going to be a huge deal. That 4.5 yards after contact per attempt is the most by a running back in the NFL since week 8. And that's a phenomenal number. That is a big number to be impressed by with anybody. So 45.5 yards is not something that I would shy away from, even splitting the workload, even with some injuries up front. I think that that is going to be a big key for them to win this game. And as well, I think that that's just way too low. This is one of the lowest rushing yardage lines we've seen Trey Henderson get in a long time. And I'm going to be hammering it in this one. So the last game, a little bit of a shorter show because we have no V to bounce off in this one. And of course, V traveling. Everybody make sure you guys wish Vishaal the best. At Vishaal_95 on Twitter. Make sure you go there, ask him about his picks, see what he's up to. But the last game on our list here is going to be Detroit at the Rams. Rams -6.5. I really do like the Rams at -6, or excuse me, not 6.5. I like the Rams at -6 in this game. The only thing I'm slightly hesitant about is that they potentially could be dealing with Devontae Adams and the hamstring. Actually, you know what? I haven't checked recently. I might check while I'm sort of waxing poetic about the Rams injury report because I saw some, I've been talking around trying to gauge on what we think about, Devontae Adams and if he's going to be. It looks like he is questionable but expected to play. So it was more of the veteran rest on the hamstring as opposed to, making him work out. He doesn't necessarily need to work out, but missed practice for the first 2 games. Looks like he is expected to go, but is questionable. He'll probably be a little bit more limited. So I do like the -6 there. But I think one of the key spots in this game that I'm actually more interested in is fading the Lions and what they've seen on offense and sort of their up and down ability on offense, particularly against this Rams defense. Now, I understand they hit 44 this past week against Dallas, a defense that had started to look revamped, but frankly, they looked better against worse offenses and worse against better offenses. It's sort of touch and go with them. They have some things they still need to figure out, particularly in the secondary. But overall, they did make strides, and that will be a spot that we can attack a little bit later down the road. But right now, I'm going to be fading them to match that output, particularly when we talk about what we've seen for them against the spread. If you look at some of these spread trends, I mean, they haven't been terribly well. Some of these totals, 24, 34, 9, these are games where they're hot and cold, hot and cold. It's really hard to trust what we're going to see from Detroit. And I'm going to be taking them at under 24.5 points because when we talk about this Rams defense, it's really the opposite. This Rams defense has been phenomenal. They're first in PFF team defense grade. They're fourth in EPA per play allowed, fourth in scoring drive percentage allowed, sixth in yards per play allowed. And then this is the big one, ninth in pressure rate. That's a bit of a low number for them. I actually see them being able to be much better in a situation when we've seen this Detroit offensive line sort of be touch and go at times, particularly in the interior. Now, potentially without Taylor Decker, who was missing from practice Wednesday and Thursday. Looks like Dan Skipper's likely going to be stepping in at left tackle. Now, Skipper has played well through his limited showing this season as a pass blocker, but we have some priors on him that don't look as glowing, where he's actually let up quite a bit of pressure. And now he's going to have to figure that out against Jared Verse, one of the best pass rushers in the game. I'm not super confident that that's a great matchup for them, particularly when we talk about some of the stylistic disadvantages that this Rams team is going to have against, that this Lions offensive line is going to have against this Rams pass rush. So the Rams run the highest rate of pass stunts in the NFL. They run it at almost a 40% clip. So that means they're going to be seeing a lot of stunts. These guys on the offensive line got to communicate, pass guys off to be able to stay within themselves and keep Jared Goff upright. The Lions, they aren't the worst team in the NFL in passing off stunts and protecting against them. But when you have new guys coming in and out of the lineup, it makes that tough. They've had some of that these past few weeks, particularly on the interior, where that's really important. And now with Taylor Decker, I think that that's going to be a spot that they can exploit. This is a team. This is one of 5 teams that has allowed more than 15% of their stunts end in a quarterback knockdown. And why is that important? Well, when we talk about what we've seen from Jared Goff, particularly when he's pressured, it's not good. His passer rating cuts in half from 127.7 to just 63 when he's under pressure, from clean to pressure. And I think this is a really big one. His uncatchable inaccuracy percentage. So his percentage of passes that were so off the mark, that not throwaways, not spikes, not things, taking those things out of it. Balls where he targets a guy and just flat out misses him. When he's clean, he's one of the most accurate quarterbacks in the NFL at 11.3% uncatchable inaccurate rate. When he's under pressure, that number skyrockets to 31.1%. And then that equates to some turnover-worthy plays. And where that could become an issue is when we talk about this Rams secondary, who's been phenomenal this season. It was one of their weak points last year, but they have been incredible this season. They have the highest PFF coverage grade as a team when they're playing behind pressure. They're third in EPA per dropback allowed, 8th in yards per coverage target, and this is the big one. They have 8 interceptions. That's the most in the NFL, tied for the most in the NFL, when they get pressure. That's a big deal, particularly when we talk about the turnover-worthy plays and the uncatchable inaccuracy percentage. If you let some of those balls get away from you, and this game turns on its head, and they pick this ball off and they win the turnover battle, that equals a bad offensive day for what we could see from this Lions team. And they've just had some trouble scoring against high pressure rate teams. In teams that rank inside of the top 10, as we said the Rams do, their median game score is 24 points. So we're getting the hook here. That's going to give us a little value in that aspect. But if we isolate that just a little bit further and we look at their splits on the road and how they've played on the road against teams that really know how to pressure. Again, they had 9 points against Philly on the road. They had 17 points against KC on the road. And it looks like they don't have the game in week 1 against Green Bay, where they scored 13 points on the road. I think we're coming into a situation where, given how good this team is, given how good this Rams offense is, another point of this is Matthew Stafford. He is absolutely incredible against man coverage. Detroit plays one of the highest rates of man coverage in the NFL, which makes me encouraged for them at -6. I will probably be taking them at -6, but I think that here also at -24.5 team points for the Lions, it makes sense. If they're taking out to a touchdown lead and the Lions have to press a little bit, they got to throw the ball, they can't run the ball, that could spark some trouble for them, particularly if the pass rush gets after it and they get home to Jared Goff and he starts feeling that pressure. It could turn into some turnovers. It could turn into a very low scoring day for this Lions team. So that's where I'm at this week. We're looking at, as I have for the recap, you guys, we are looking at the Jags -13.5. We're going to be taking New England on the money line. And of course, like I just said, Rams -6, but Detroit under 24.5 team points. And you know what? It's a little bit of a shorter show, but that about does it for us. That does it for our week 15. Like I said, there's still some more good games on the slate. So make sure you guys go check them out. Hit us up in the Discord, importantnonsense.com. That's how you become a member. Get access to our Discord. You can ask myself any questions you have in there about this game or about these games or any other games on the slate. And of course, you can ask the fantasy guys about their suggestions for you to bring home your fantasy championship. And of course, check out all of our shows here. Important Nonsense on YouTube, at NonsenseFF on Twitch. Make sure you guys hit us up and yeah, it's going to be a good week of football, as my partner in crime V always says. And until next time, everybody, good night, good luck.